You're tuned in to RX Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to RX Radio. With me today, I have a special guest, Dr. Dwayne Jackson. Thanks for being here, Dwayne.
Thanks, Jordan. Great to be here.
Yeah, I always appreciate it. So if you guys are interested, Dwayne teaches he's basically the head of our nutrition here at Prescript. He teaches the body composition course, and he also teaches a gut health course for us. Right now, we just opened up registration for his body composition course. We'll be starting this the first week in August. So if you're interested, head on over to the website. You can sign up right on the website. Check out the landing page. There's a bunch of great information about the course. But thankfully, today I have Dwayne here with me, and we're going to kind of talk through a little bit of his mindset in developing this course and where he sees the best utility from this course and really the application, because that's what all this really comes down to. It doesn't matter how much information you have. It doesn't matter the knowledge you have if you can't apply it. So I think that's where, Dwayne, where you're really helpful in teaching me at least, and teaching those that you do teach, is that you have a lot of experience on conveying the information, because research on nutrition can be very dense. It can be hard to interpret. It can be just poor quality information. And that's the benefit I've seen with having you convey this information, is that you're well versed in interpreting this information, so you can sort through and understand exactly the value that the information provides. So that's kind of where I want to take this today with you, and I want to get an understanding of where your mindset was in terms of developing the body composition course. And I know you've been in the education system for a long time. You've been applying nutrition. You have a background in bodybuilding, which is the sport of competitive body composition. So understanding your background and how you apply this in your coaching, just to know what you think the most valuable parts of understanding how to manipulate nutrition are, or how to even measure body composition. I know it's a big part about what you're talking about, the background knowledge that it requires, that it takes to be able to make these changes and actually apply these changes. That's what I want to get some insight from you on today. So I guess we'll start off with the idea that you developed this course to teach other people how to manipulate and manage body composition. From your experience, what have been kind of the entry points for that? Like what got you interested in that? How did you start into that? And then how have you gone through that process of the way I think this is doing it wrong before you understood how to do it right?
Yes. So I began into this whole area of nutrition and whatnot with my love for sport. And I've been a pro athlete in motocross, a competitive athlete in bodybuilding for several years. And I've also raced pro boats, and I raced bicycles for Yale University. And so I've always been right into everything from the cardiovascular aspects of conditioning right through to, putting on massive amounts of muscle and not worrying whatsoever about the cardiovascular aspects of health. So over the years, it's been really interesting, because I've worked with many people, even when I was, working in medicine and everything at the University of Western Ontario, lab and everything. I always kept my feet in athletics. And nutrition is one area that if you don't have that under control, then really you're not reaping maximum benefits of training, dieting for that matter, when we're trying to change body composition, or any sort of aspect of pushing the needle forward in a, optimal or efficient means. And the biggest component that's missing these days is really psychological and social. And so I take a biopsychosocial approach to the course that we teach, because humans aren't robots. And whether you're a pro athlete or just a regular person that wants to push the needle on their health and their body weight or whatever else it is, you have to consider all aspects of human health, which involve a lot of psychology and a lot of social. So really, most coaches have the biological stuff under control, or at least somewhat from what they get. And that's really been boiled down to macronutrient prescriptions, I guess you would call them. But the problem is, if it's just a matter of, incrementally lowering calories and, building them back up and lowering them, then this wouldn't be difficult. And we wouldn't have an issue with, people needing coaches, because there's enough information online to be able to put together a basic diet. So the course really is built from reverse engineering of all of the thousands of people I've worked with over the years, whether it be, training physicians or going right through to helping people lose weight. It doesn't matter. If you do not consider the psychosocial aspects of what you're trying to achieve, and you don't have tools for doing that, then, it's going to be a lot tougher slog to get to that body composition that we're seeking, especially in the environment that we live in North America.
Sorry, I just want to make sure you're done. I think I had a little glitch on my
I'm
done. I think that's a great approach towards this. It's a very practical and very complete approach. And the one thing that you said in there that is kind of, it clicks in my mind, because it's what I see as most people's entry point into nutrition coaching is macronutrients, or like a flexible dieting type of approach. And I think I've been introduced to nutrition in kind of various ways, like manipulating nutrition for body composition for sports like wrestling and weightlifting, where it's a little bit different than bodybuilding, where there is kind of a performance component to it. But the thing that I've seen is that it's always done pretty poorly. Maybe not always, but a lot of the time it's done pretty poorly. And I think macronutrients it's a starting point for it to be done better. But there's a lot to go after macronutrients. And the thing that I think, it takes a lot of learning, and there's kind of a high barrier of entry for people to get the buy-in, to commit to that, and to do the learning that they have to be successful when counting macronutrients. But I think it's like, for example, a specific example. Right now I'm trying to gain weight, and I'm eating a lot of carbohydrates throughout the day. And I could just go and get like a 6-pack of Coca-Cola and drink that every day and get a certain number of carbohydrates in. And in the app, it checks the box of me meeting my carbohydrate requirement. But I'm going to feel a lot different. Functions in my body are going to happen a lot differently if I were to do it that way versus if I were to do it with, whole foods, grains, rice, vegetables, fruits, things like that. And that's the part that's where it ends with macronutrient counting, is that these two are kind of the same in the eyes of your macro calculator, right? But as we start to look at other things, which I'll kind of get your opinion on, is it doesn't take into account, maybe to some degree it does, it tells you your micronutrients or the vitamins and minerals that you're getting. But if we're only focused on carbs, protein, and fat, maybe fiber sometimes, then we're not getting the whole picture. Yeah, sometimes, not enough times. We're not getting the whole picture. But then there's, even as we look at micronutrients, there's things that take it further than that, things that you'll talk about in like the gut health course, and we're talking about prebiotic, probiotic fiber, different types of fiber, and understanding the gut microbiome. I think that these are things that they're starting to come to the limelight. They're starting to become a little bit more popularized, but I don't think that they're well understood. And especially for people that are seeking nutrition coaching, and maybe they're on the beginning part of that learning curve where they're starting to learn macronutrients. Ooh. What is your opinion on the macronutrient approach, and is that a good place to start or not? And then maybe most importantly, where do you go from there to start to learn about the other things that might be important, or the other things that are going to impact not just your body composition, but your overall health?
Yeah, this is the crux to the industry at the moment. Is that there are really kind of like, if you look at it from a broad bird's eye perspective, there's two kind of camps. There's a camp that says, well, calories a calorie, and we need to make sure that we just hit those macros. And if you do, your body composition is going to change in the direction that you want it to wherever you use macros. That's correct in terms of fundamentals. But the thing is, Coca-Cola example is perfect. That, having a Coca-Cola or something, say, that has, 30 or 40 grams of carbohydrate that's sugar-based, glucose-based, versus, say, a bowl of quinoa or, with some vegetables in it with the same amount of carbohydrate content, the difference between those biochemically are completely different in terms of the speed at which the blood glucose reaches glucose reaches the blood, the impact on digestive health and the consequences thereof, in the subsequent meals, as well as satiety effects that we get from the biochemistry behind having a high fiber carbohydrate source that's starchy versus a very simple carbohydrate source that's, purely based on glucose or high fructose corn syrup or something along those lines. And so in the course, I actually make sure that, like I said, we reverse engineered everything so that at the very onset of the course, we talk about body composition manipulation and how to measure it, but then we go into every single biochemical detail on the processing and digestion of carbohydrates, fats, proteins, and what those mean when they reach the cell or the mitochondria, when we're trying to extract energy from them or when we're trying to build something from these foods. And for all the students that have taken the course, they understand clearly that there are definitive pathways that have a common final pathway to create ATP, and which is our energy currency that we get from foods, what we're trying to seek. And they can also learn pretty quickly from understanding those biochemical pathways, the consequences of choosing different types of food to have in dietary programming so that they can, help people push the needle when they really haven't been able to by just, adding up their calories at the end of the day and saying, good, I hit 1,500, so therefore I'm going to, be good. Or I hit my 1 gram per pound of protein and I hit my 1,500 calories, so therefore, I'm good. Because the most common thing that we see now in the fitness industry, and I work with, like I said, like thousands of people, is many people who are undergoing some sort of body composition transformation where they're trying to lose body fat and get a little more shredded are under eating. And that's why they hit plateaus. And then the under eating leads to a pile of other performance issues, as well as reaching a plateau that then affect the psyche and social life. Because when we're eating 12, 13, 14, 1,500 calories a day over extended periods, our body will adapt biologically, but also our social life will adapt because we no longer want to go out and hang out with our buddies at the such and such because they're going to be eating A, B, and C, and that's not on my diet and these kind of things. This all detracts from the success of any body composition endeavor. Now, if we're an athlete, it's pretty simple. If we're serious, we can treat ourselves like robots. And bodybuilding is a perfect example of robotic behavior. Antisocial, take that right out of the equation for social because your social life goes down the tubes. If you are doing something social, you're eating. And so you've got to be an athlete that has some sort of goal to reach when you're, when you have these eating behaviors and these training behaviors and have lack of social, because it will start to bear on the rest of your health. So it's real important, that example is a great one, bodybuilding, because it is a real sport where, it's lonely. And it's not the model of how we change body composition in a normal, healthy circumstance. In fact, it's kind of the antithesis to that because of the fact that we're missing many components of health, human health, when we kind of, go down these roads where it's just, a myopic focus of I got to get to said weight, said body fat, said look. And if we flip it over and understand the psychology and the sociology and the biology behind it, which the course goes into quite well, then we can start pushing the needle on all the different people that we work with or ourselves, because really every one of us needs work in one or more of those aspects of biology, psychology, or sociology. And they all overlap in a Venn diagram. And when we have our backyard cleaned up and we're eating well to supply the nutrients for the performance that we're trying to have as, you know, a human being that's moving, that's when the magic starts. That's when things happen.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I think it's worth expanding on these a little bit because, and the one that interests me the most, because this is the least tangible to me, is the psychology side of things. I like to draw parallels and things that you and I do just because it bridges the gap to kind of laterally apply concepts for me. And one of the things that you mentioned there was health. And I think of that as like anyone who wants performance, first they have to find health before we can go down that route of performance or chasing performance. And I'd like to think it's similar with what you do. Correct me if I'm wrong, please.
Oh, no, you're
Awesome. And I think that's a hard baseline to find with some people psychologically, because something that you also mentioned was people just have this understanding that if I want to lose weight, I need to eat less. So like you said, people will typically have better progress changing body composition or losing body fat at first by actually eating more food. And I think that's a hard psychological leap for some people to make just because they don't understand how that works or the logic that applies to that. Can you explain how you would have that conversation or how you approach that topic to kind of talk to someone that psychologically they're having a hard time accepting that?
Absolutely. And actually in the course, I go through a section on motivational interviewing. So it's really a matter of getting to know the client. And I talk about this at the front end of the course, where your network is going to be, you know, basically your net worth, as they say, right? And as a coach, that network is ultra important because everybody's kind of got, you know, little bits of information that they can share that are anecdotes to these things. And the reason why they're anecdotes is because, like I said, everybody's different. They need a little bit more help with different aspects of the biopsychosocial components of changing body composition. Now, yeah, I agree 100% that we have to have health first in order for our body to work properly. The problem is that the sports, you know, strength sports, bodybuilding, aesthetic sports in general, anything that the goal for fitness is a tangible. Like, I want to be, you know, squatting 600 pounds by October. Or anything that's, you know, an athletic endeavor that the person is trying to achieve is going to be tangible. If it's someone losing weight, it's like by the time I go to Cuba or to, you know, Mexico, I want to make sure that I'm down 25 pounds. When we set ourselves up for that stuff, we set an expectation. And the biggest problem with expectations is when we don't meet them, the disappointment is great. So the distance between what we're expecting to lose, gain, whatever that is, PRs, and what occurs, that discrepancy is the motivation killer, the thing that makes people fucking binge eat. It's the thing that people say, like, well, my body's broken. This isn't for me, obviously, because my friend did this and it's fine. And that delineation between, you know, the strict eating and everything else leading to performance and focusing on health leading to performance is really neat because there's really no difference. It's how you frame it. And the problem is, and they asked this question of Olympic athletes, I think these would be before the Seoul Olympics or something. It was like, you know, if you could get a first place medal, but know that the drug that you take to get that, you won't be detected for it, you'll win it, no problem. It will cause serious consequences to your health and you'll die early from it. Would you do it? And I think it was like 90 some odd percent said yes. And in fact, myself, until my kidneys failed, I probably would have said yes. That's because we're focused on the wrong thing. And it's really funny because the guys and girls that are focused on building health in the face of strength, in the face of aerobic conditioning, in the face of getting lean, tend to actually have all those things kind of happen naturally. And funny part about it is it's actually mindfulness that these people are exhibiting, because they're not having this propensity to think into the future, 3 months, 20 weeks, whatever that is, about a win, but rather they're thinking about day by day, how they can optimize the day so that they win, so that they guarantee they fucking win. It's not luck. It's not something that happens to you. You're making it happen. And that's the most important aspect. Doesn't matter, like I said, if you're a pro athlete or you need to lose 450 pounds, you must have your focus on a day by day progress and not some, shallow based diet, not Jordan Shaw, but a very thin diet that works well over the course of 16 weeks. But then you fall apart mentally and physically, your hair is falling out and everything else, but you have abs.
Yeah.
And that's where the biggest problem is, because progress can't be made without fueling the body. And if we're not healthy, our body focuses on repairing the thing that is broken.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And you see that all too often with these popular fad elimination diets, where say you eliminate everything besides red meat. Like, yeah, you're probably going to lose some weight. You're going to shed all the water you have in your body. But how sustainable is something like that? Like, can you do this you do it for 12 weeks. Can you do it for a year? Can you do it for 5 years? You can't do it for the rest of your life. So I understand there is some utility in these elimination diets when it's necessary, but I think people get it misconstrued that this is a lifestyle change, when realistically it should be something for a period of time, or maybe it shouldn't even be that, but maybe it should be something that's used as a tool for you to gain information that you can now be more effective in finding a long-term sustainable diet moving forward. But is this something you've seen that people take elimination diets too far? And if so, what is the harm in doing that?
Yeah, so the elimination diets in general work really, really well for when we're starting, so like low-fat diet, for example, right? Work really well when we're starting out to kind of, reestablish digestive health. Because if someone's been doing the chicken, rice, broccoli thing over and over and over again for 20 weeks, chances are they're going to be sensitive to most carbohydrate sources that are fermentable, just because they haven't, harbored the right bacteria and whatnot and everything to kind of take care of those fibers. So you end up feeling bloating and shitty. And so generally speaking, the biggest thing with elimination diet is the fact that when you eliminate food groups or parts of food groups or, whatever it may be that you're eliminating, you eliminate variety. And variety in our diet is the thing that actually gives us the micronutrients that help support health. And so it's no coincidence that most of my clients come to me after they've worked with other coaches for several years, actually. And then they've reached a point where they've just kind of tapped all their resources and they're not pushing the needle on their health or their body composition anymore. And this is kind of the tough part, because what happens is people get themselves into that body composition they feel it makes them happy. Like I said, their hair starts falling out and these kind of things. And now they don't know where to maneuver, because the only thing they know is to eat the way they were before. And if they do that, they know they're going to gain the weight back that they lost. So there's, a lot of science behind how we rebuild diets for clients and for athletes and whatnot, in order to actually get them to a point where they're healthy and digestively and physically, and they can actually start now manipulating calories in a more thoughtful way, so that we can, get ourselves to where we need to go, but still maintain performance, lifestyle, hair growth, all those things at the same time. And that's the biggest problem with the elimination diets is the lack of variety. Then, clamps are micronutrition. And if it's not perfect, then over time that becomes deficiencies.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think the part that people don't understand is what happens after the elimination diet, that reintroduction phase where now they have to kind of reacclimate back into normal eating habits, and they don't really know where to go with that, just because they've gotten the framework to eliminate things, which is really easy, like don't eat anything on this list, but there's not necessarily a hard framework into what they should eat or how they should start to reintroduce these things. So do you have any advice for someone that may be going through that process and are trying to figure out what the next steps are into figuring out what their normal diet should look like afterwards?
Absolutely. And in fact, people that have been undergoing an elimination diet for a long period of time will tend to have low fiber intake. It's just the elimination diets in general are, let's get rid of some of these vegetables and fruits. The fruits get out of there because of all the fear for like insulin spikes and all this kind of stuff. But like insulin spikes are good when we eat carbs. That's the whole fucking point. So carbs are funny for people, and carbs, and we know that right now, carbs are kind of like a thing where like, really I can have 300, 400 grams of carbs a day and still, do my thing. Absolutely. So generally speaking, when we eliminate, we don't really eliminate protein for that much unless there's some sort of sickness. But in a healthy person, the elimination diet includes like keep that protein high because it's thermogenic, it reduces satiety, builds muscle, right? Maintains muscle mass in the face of dieting. But fats and carbs have almost like a binary relationship. And so people who are eating, low carbs tend to have higher fat to fill in those calories, and then vice versa. And the problem with eliminating things like carbohydrate foods is that's where we're going to get all of the fiber we need and a lot of the micronutrition that, in fact, most of the micronutrition that comes with the diet, including minerals and whatnot that keep us hydrated. And so it's funny because a lot of times people who undergo these elimination diets tend to actually be afraid to do the thing that needs to be done, not only because of lack of knowledge, but also because they've been reinforced and taught that carbohydrates are evil and fat is sort of evil, but it doesn't cause insulin spikes. So at the end of the day, with all the biochemistry and stuff we do in the core, you will understand pretty quickly that insulin spikes are actually the natural, perfectly good way to extract energy, or at least store energy from carbohydrates and muscle. Insulin is also a really good thing for anabolism. And so we can utilize carbohydrates to our advantage in order to get things going. So that kind of lays the framework for what elimination usually looks like. When people are eliminating their carbohydrates, they eliminate a lot of soluble and insoluble fiber. And so not only do we lose micronutrition, but we lose insoluble and soluble fiber. And so people tend to be, sitting at around 10 to 20 grams of fiber a day. Females should be aiming for 28 to 30 grams. Males should be aiming for 38 to 40 grams a day. And so when we have that low fiber content, then we start to see all the gut health issues whenever we eat fiber. We also see inflammatory processes that we think we're, allergic or sensitive to foods. And so in order to actually bring those back into the diet, the best way to do it is with carbohydrate sources that aren't going to be highly fermentable at the front end, but they provide the bacteria in the large intestine with the foods, the fibers, to at least promote their growth. And then over time, they'll find they'll tolerate more fiber as they add to the diet, as they tolerate the additions. So it's basically like, little bits of poison to build up a tolerance to if they want to look at it like poison, right? But once we get gut health on point and digestive health on point, then you start to realize, the body works much more efficiently when I'm like this. So if you're on an elimination diet and you want to start getting fiber into your diet and get that kind of going, start adding in low FODMAP vegetables, Stay away from cruciferous ones at the front end if they make you gassy, even if they're low FODMAP, if that's like broccoli and cauliflower. And stick to things like red peppers, yellow peppers, and colored peppers, berries with, like raspberries and blueberries, and then also things like flax. And it has to be, make sure it's milled flax, because when it's shell, it's all insoluble fiber. So you just poop out flax seeds. But if you crush it up, you get this really, really high nutrient dense food that has omega-3s, lots of fiber, good soluble fiber that the body can utilize to actually slow down the digestive processes and stop those big insulin spikes and get that going. So everybody out there, if they're not getting enough fiber, add 2 tablespoons of flax to your diet every day. And if you eat oats, have yourself a half a cup of oats, and that's going to start rounding things out real well for you. And it won't cause a massive impact on, gut health because of the, the fact that you haven't been eating those fibrous foods for a long time.
That's incredible. Honestly, I've been eating flax for about 6 months now because of you, but I had no idea. Now I do. So thank you for that. Thank you for that 6 months ago, and thank you again now. No, I think that's really helpful information to have, and I think it goes along with the lines of being able to create health so that you can create an environment for change to happen now. And I really like that idea, and I think that's a really strong framework to have for people that are trying to either help others create change in body composition, or people who themselves are trying to create change in their body composition. And as we kind of dig in on that topic, I guess a question that I have for you, because this is becoming very popular in the space now, is a lot of people just get routine blood work done. And it's something that has always been, there are markers for health that people monitor, and I think it's always been done in a very clinical setting. But now I feel like we're getting to an evolution in the fitness industry where there are these, we'll say, non-licensed healthcare professionals, that, like, not in the traditional sense, like a medical doctor, that are interpreting blood work and are using it to make supplement prescriptions or lifestyle changes and things like that. So I guess in your opinion, what is the value in getting blood work done? And then what can we pull from that to be able to make changes in someone's diet day to day, whether that's for creating that baseline of health or actually pushing the envelope in terms of body composition changes?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's actually kind of funny because the whole fact that health is even a question in it, right, makes us really wonder like what we're doing, right? So the point is, when we do our labs, really what we're getting is a snapshot in time. Some of them are like a length of time. Some are like instant, you got her done. But generally we get a snapshot in time of where we're sitting in terms of health from a, blood marker perspective. And so when people get their blood work done, really, getting a foundation of knowing what their blood cells look like, so the red blood cells and white blood cells through a CBC, that's good because that can predict some stuff that's, downstream that may be going wrong, things like, cancers and stuff like that, anemias, if performance is low. Also a complete metabolic panel, which then we can get our electrolytes and all of our, kidney function and everything else from that. And we should have a lipid panel kind of mixed within there so that we have our cholesterol levels and everything else. And then know where our blood glucose sits from a fasting perspective, as well as a, HbA1c, which gives us, a snapshot of several weeks. Kind of call it the lie detector, basically, because you can always get a good blood glucose when you're fasting, but what's it look like on a day-to-day basis? And that's what HbA1c gives us. And if all those are in check, then there's not a whole heck of a lot that we have to look further, unless we have some issues with, energy and problems getting moving in the morning and that kind of stuff. That could be thyroid or a number of other issues. But the point is that if we have cholesterol problems, if we have issues even slight with blood glucose, if we have inflammatory measurements like high ferritin or high HSCRP or C-reactive peptide, then our body is not as worried about your body composition as you are. Your body is going to work on trying to ameliorate the issue at hand that's causing those problems. And there's going to be a focus on that, and it's going to break down things through catabolism in order to support the areas of the body that need support from a health perspective. So it's imperative, actually, for us to make sure that our blood work is good on a at least yearly basis. For my pro athletes, some of them are getting done every 4 weeks, but that's because they're actually like doing unhealthy things. But it's imperative because really, if you think about it, your body is always going to be repairing, and your workouts are there to create a stimulus for repair. And that repair always super compensates. But if you're under extreme inflammation chronically, and you're not metabolizing glucose properly, and you have dyslipidemia in the face of all this, your body's going to be trying to protect its cardiovascular mechanisms and everything else, and really working to try and repair those at the same time. So you're definitely not efficiently getting to the end point that you want to. And so it doesn't take any more time to actually set things up so they're healthy. It just takes the knowledge to be able to do it, and to actually go ride against the wind, because currently there's so much misinformation out there because it's the short-term plan. And there's a lot of shitty coaches that can't maintain clients for more than a few months. So they give them a few months of a shitty plan, and then they end up working with people from Prescript or whatever taking the course because they actually understand how to push them through whatever problems that were caused by the shitty plan. And so, it's funny because if you talk to any of our graduates from the program, they always say that they've made back in spades what they paid into the program because they have that extra knowledge. And we take a team approach to the program. So anybody who's taken my course knows they'll reach out to me, and I will answer questions about their clients and everything else, because I look at them as my, the proteges that are out there actually spreading the good word and getting people healthy so that they can perform amazing. And it works.
That's unreal. Yeah, and anyone listening, I don't know if you understand how valuable of a resource it is to have Dr. Jackson on your team. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely reach out, get in the course. You can interact with him in the labs, and you will then be his protege, which is pretty fucking cool. But to continue on that route, I guess a question that I have for you is that when we're kind of blurring the lines between what would be considered maybe traditional medical treatment and nutritional intervention, as we start to go the route of blood work, like one of our sponsors here on the podcast, Marek Health, they'll send you for your blood labs, you'll get it back, you'll talk to a health coach who will interpret your labs for you, and then make recommendations around whether it's supplements, whether it's nutritional intervention, whether it's prescription intervention. And it's becoming a more popular and common service that you'll start to see, like these telehealth internet-based companies. So I guess my question for you is, when do we start to get to that point where nutritional intervention leaves off and medical pharmaceutical intervention picks up? Or is there a point where we hand the baton, or should it always be something that's nutritional based? We're trying to do as much as we can there, and then if we can't get it all the way to where we need it, then we go the route of prescription, but we don't ever really pass off the baton fully. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of room for nutrition and medicine to live in the same house.
Yeah.
In fact, it makes no fucking sense for them not to. The only reason why I left, 20 years of, I was 30 some odd years in academia, but, 20 years of having a lab and everything else. And then, medical chair and the whole thing at Western University. The reason why I left it was because there was a need to bridge that gap. And funny enough, physicians in North America, in Australia, We got a lot of people in Australia that really work with us and everything else, Prescript. Worldwide now are becoming a lot more constrained in what they're willing to do. And that's just strictly because of the medical colleges. And constrained in the amount of time they can spend doing those things. So products like what Marek has is great. In fact, I send a lot of people that way because a lot of people can't even get a family physician or PCP. And so they provide a service that actually doesn't exist in a lot of people's worlds. And I love it too, because I can then prescribe or recommend to people, get this, and this measured. And then if we see something we need to dig a little deeper, Marek has a laundry list of amazing tests that we can then jump into. And so where the medicine and nutrition fit together is it's always a matter of follow medical advice when you're sick. It's really important. Like, you're not going to be buying fucking peptides from someone on the street, right, to fix a problem that needs to be medically treated. And you're not going to outrun, let's just use one, heart disease from using anabolic steroids and having high blood pressure for several years by buying a supplement and eating fruits and vegetables. You're going to need medical intervention or at least medical imaging to understand the depth of your issues. So my case is perfect for this because, I've got a kidney transplant, bodybuilder, pro athlete. I've beaten them up pretty good, had to get a new kidney. And I take handfuls of pills every day so I don't reject that kidney. It's sitting in my belly. And so really, we need both sides if we want to survive this life on Earth. Like, that's why humans have been able to push the envelope on how long they live for. It wasn't fucking primal living that made people live longer. So the key here is really that balance. And I think Marek and companies like that actually offer a really, really great service for people who, one, don't have a PCP, or two, don't trust the medical system. And so now it's, the reason why I'm so busy with doing blood work for people is literally because I can relate to them. I can understand where they're coming from. I've lived the life, but I also have, spent a lot of time studying, a lot of time educating people, a lot of time doing research in the area. And if we want to, as humans, push the envelope on anything and not live perfectly moderate, then we can expect that we're going to need some sort of medical intervention, whether it's just getting a fucking broken leg, a cast on a broken leg, or having 2 avulsion fractures from squatting, and having those surgically put back on, and everything involved in that. It doesn't really much matter. When we're pushing the envelope, hearts break. And so we have to trust medical practitioners for that. But on our way to breaking parts, which is what the medical community fixes, is wear and tear on the parts that we can monitor. And Marek offers that really well, because then we can head things off at the pass before they break. And that's really the essence of health, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the idea that should be a collaborative process. And that's, as I mentioned earlier, I think you approach nutrition a similar way that I approach like rehab and strength and exercise in general, is that it's not just one thing that's going to fix the issue. We need to combat it from every possible way that we can. So I like that idea, and it's like, maybe analogy for me would be working with an orthopedic surgeon to get someone in really good shape going into a surgery, and then they will have a better baseline coming out of surgery so that we can have a better rehab process. And it sounds like that's kind of the approach that you take when it comes to working with the traditional medical system in terms of nutritional intervention.
100%, man. And what's really neat about that is nutritionally also, before people go into surgery, during surgery, and out of surgery, goes in there too. So, we don't live in silos. Health isn't a fucking silo.
Yeah.
Right. Health is a collaborative, overlapping process of protecting everything that we call health. So you can have abs and be a complete basket case and not have mental health. There's a lot of that goes on, right? That you won't sustain that. You can't live your life in that state. So we need to, focus on that. That's the broken part. Just because the abs aren't there or the abs are there, there's still broken parts. And it's the same thing when we go into surgery, and it's especially like the psychological aspects of an athlete, say, for example, going into surgery and thinking like, when I come out, I'm going to be a different athlete. And am I going to be able to like fucking circumvent the amount of muscle mass loss I've had in my legs after I had my hip done? Right?
Yes. Yeah, they're very real challenges. And I think out of all this stuff, the psychological component of it may be the most potent, the most powerful. Because if you don't have that buy-in, if you don't have that trust, then none of it's going to work. Like kind of like how we started off the podcast, is that you can have all the knowledge, all the information, it can all be correct. Like I could write the perfect program for someone, but if they don't trust me, if they don't have the buy-in, if they don't believe that it's going to work, then it's not going to work. It's just plain and simple like that. So that is a very powerful part of this process. And I think a lot of that comes down to the coaching side of things, being dynamic and understanding how to communicate with the human, understanding some of the things that you mentioned earlier is being able to get very hard goals out of people can be helpful, because then you can make it a bit more objective, and you can set realistic expectations based off of what the science says, what your experience tells you, that you can then start to get trust and get buy-in because of the way that you're treating the situation, the way that you're able to get progress to a reasonable degree and manage expectations around that. But I think that that's probably the hardest part of this entire process, especially, and I'll be honest, people ask me nutritional questions all the time, and I don't fucking touch them because I have more nutritional knowledge than probably most personal trainers, definitely your average personal trainer, but I don't have the patience to deal with the psychological side of nutrition.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't deal with it, because it's a very emotional thing for a lot of people to have someone come in and say that I understand you feel this way about your body. Let's make these changes in your diet, and you need to trust me because it's going to work. I don't have the tools to navigate that landscape. So I guess where I'm going with this is how do you broach those topics of conversation? How do you get that trust and buy-in with people that might be a little bit more hesitant?
Yeah, and that is the crux of the whole thing is do they trust the process? And in trusting the process, they have to trust their mentor, right? And that's the coach. And the worst part is if you're doing something that's like non-conventional by what they've done before to get to where they needed to go. So for example, like chicken and rice, all right? Getting that buy-in to you. And so in the course, that's why I spend we spend a lot of time on the biochemistry. We spend a lot of time on understanding the foods and how they integrate with the brain and your guts, and how decision-making for people can really depend on how you set up the diet at the front end, and how they binge at the end of the day really matters about how you set up the diet in terms of circadian rhythms, daylight cycles, and everything else. But here's the thing. Humans sometimes work fucking night shifts, or sometimes they have children. And so it's not a cut and dry cookie cutter process. This is a dynamic, and we go through this a lot in the course. The interview process, the ongoing, meeting with your clients and talking to them and understanding their specific situation is ultra important, because it's dynamic. Like my sister had an aneurysm, like 9 weeks ago, and has half a skull now, and she was perfectly healthy before that happened. And now she's paralyzed on one side and everything else, right? And it's like that happens. That shit comes in. That's an extreme example, but it happens. And there's two things that come from that. One, your clients are going to be in very dynamic circumstances. Stress affects everything. We go through a lot of stuff on stress and sleep. That affects everything, psyche, biologically, social. And so when we have situations that are highly dynamic and moving all the time in biology and psychology and social, it's the psyche that takes the hit because you failed at this, or, I'm stressed about the fact that I got to travel, or whatever it may be, work, whatever it is. And so we hone in on that. It's that interview process you do with your clients through motivational interviewing that we go through this type of style in our labs. And the idea is to extract as much information on an ongoing basis for the client, because the client you start with isn't the client that you have 3 months from now. And it isn't the client that you have 2 weeks after that. And it goes in ebbs and flows, just like their weight does. And sometimes it's the weight that drives all the psyche. Other times it's the psyche that drives all the weight issues if you're focused on weight. And so in our course, we take an integrative approach to understand what are our biological inputs. So, we can use, if you're training people in person, you can see how they move in the gym, you can see their motivation, you can interview them. But a lot of people are coaching online. So how do we do this? Well, we can do it through biometrics that come from wearables. We can do it from, tracking their workouts and looking at the volume of the sets or the total weight or whatever it is that we want to measure it by. We can use pictures. We can use open-ended questions to let them storytell and kind of get a feeling for how they're feeling. But overall, you have to integrate everything or there's not going to be success. And that's why people fail at traditional diets, where they're just following a thing. You give them tools, like you said, Jordan. Give them tools so that I call them escape hatches for my clients. So they go away on the weekend, they overeat, and they want to swing the pendulum the other way, so they eat hardly anything. And then we end up in a speed wobble the whole week, right? So I tell them on Monday, pull out our such and such escape hatch. And it'll be a specific dietary plan that they pull out when they're feeling like they're lost because they fucked up the weekend. And that works for some, doesn't work so much for others. So there's different strokes for different folks, and we cover them all in the course. And anybody who's taken the course knows that I'm very enthusiastic about it. So we go into a lot of detail into the actual science behind it. This isn't stuff that I've made up. This is stuff from psychology that's been around for a while, long time. And that's how we kind of get around those situations, is by, building the toolbox.
I love it. Yeah, break glass in case of emergency. But that's definitely something that I've seen you do better than I'll say anyone I've seen do it, is take the science and interpret that and make it something that's applicable and practical and understandable. That's where I really like your content, your information, is that you can take very complex topics and you can make them very digestible. And that's the big part that bridges the gap between, like you said, all this information that's out there and the actual application that we need to make it useful. So I'm grateful to have you on the team for that. Grateful to see this course roll out. And I'm really excited to see this one kick off. So again, anyone here that's interested in learning from Dwayne, the body composition course is now live on the website, www.pre-script.com. You can head on over there, get all the information from the page. There's a ton on there. Take a look at it. Feel free to reach out to me. Dwayne, if someone wants to reach out to you and talk to you either about the course or just about working with you or any inquiries in general, where can they find you?
Absolutely. Just contact me on Instagram if you're on there. My handle is at Dwayne Jackson. Or you can contact me by email at Dwayne@drdwaynejackson.com and ask me anything you want. I look forward to seeing everybody in class.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again for being here, Dwayne. Anything that you'd like to say before we close it out?
No, except for if you're a coach and you really want to push the needle on things, this course is the most comprehensive, in-depth course that you're going to get out there currently that I got it anyway. And this is like a university level information or depth of information, but I build it over time slowly so that everybody gets it. And if you're a current coach, and you've got your dietary stuff you feel under total control, I'll bet you if you take this course, you'll learn more than the $13.99 or whatever it costs within those 14 weeks. I can promise you that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it absolutely provides more value than the cost, and it's definitely going to help people not only make changes in themselves, but if you guys are coaches, make changes in all of your clients. So awesome. Well, thank you, Dwayne. We'll have to do
Thanks,
this
brother, man.
soon. We'll make this a regular segment on the show, but I appreciate
Love
it.
it.